Thank you, Patty. I have to recover from that gracious introduction. I had so many potential responses to all the potential things I thought you might say. This is the Groucho Marx line that of all of the introductions I've had, that was the most recent, was actually on my list, but that was quite lovely. Thank you very much. And thank you all for the invitation for Angela and I to be here today. I'm going to begin with a brief overview of our agency in general terms, and then I will turn things over to my colleague. So the first slide on the screen tells you we have been active and engaged in this work in York County for the better part of 7 decades. Our agency began as Lutheran Welfare Services, and our first retirement community was the Lutheran Home for the Aged. Obviously, crack marketing teams came up with that name. But that was, that was then, and this is now. We are an agency of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, with which we have had a long and strong affiliation. But let me just say very candidly that our church affiliation has never, for us, been about anything sectarian. On the screen, you see the elevator speech that I developed a number of years ago for myself. And I developed that, frankly, out of a bit of frustration of how often I was asked questions on the street or in Rotary or wherever, well, do you have to be Lutheran to come to one of your facilities? Or do you have to be Lutheran to work at Lutheran Social Services and then SpiriTrust Lutheran? And so I came up with this as a response. That Lutheran is not about who we serve. It is not even about who's doing the serving, but it is about why we serve. There's a great quote from Martin Luther who says, "God does not need your good works, but your neighbor does." And we take that very much to heart every day in what we do. We are not alone in this work that we do. Our agency is a part of an umbrella organization called Lutheran Services in America, which binds all of us with a common Lutheran heritage of social ministry and social service together. The Lutherans have the distinction of being the longest organization serving in these ways in America. We have over 350 agencies like ours, from very small organizations to organizations larger than us, serving in a variety of ways that certainly often include senior services, but many, many other things. And the statistic that we like to quote, because it's true, is that 1 in 50 Americans is touched every day in some way, shape, or form by the work of a Lutheran social ministry organization. And it is something that we are, again, proud of. So this is our work by the numbers. We have 2016 that we're looking at. We haven't calculated 17 yet, of course. We are in 20 counties in the state of Pennsylvania and 3 in northern Maryland. Again, we began here. This is still where our corporate offices are and where many of our services are delivered, but we are through 20 counties in the state. In 2016, we calculated 24,000 people were served by one aspect or another of our ministry and mission. We have just over 1,400 employees, 5,200 volunteers, many of those on our senior living campuses, many of those serving in our hospice programs throughout the state, and all told, again, a fairly significant impact, particularly in York. Our work in services provided, we have 6 senior living retirement communities. 4 of those alone are in York County. Now, I always like to add to that that's only if you consider Hanover a part of York County. It is the independent nation of Hanover, but on the map, it is a part of York County. So 4 of our communities here in York, 1 in Adams County, and 1 in Franklin County in Chambersburg. And then a variety of other things that we'll just zip through very quickly. Second only to our senior services and residential living is our Lutheran Home Care and our Lutheran Home Care and Hospice program, which is again throughout the whole state and Maryland. Our life programs, we have one in Chambersburg and one in Cumberland County, which is a unique partnership program with the state of Pennsylvania that is targeted to a very specific demographic and that is helping people every day to stay out of senior care, particularly skilled care facilities, and be able to continue living in their own homes with support. And a variety of community-based programs, financial coaching, volunteer income tax assistance, domestic abuse solutions, deaf connections, counseling. You can read everything up on the list. And almost all of those programs, by the way, do take place here in York County. One of the areas that I am responsible for, as you all know, is philanthropy. One of the hallmarks of our organization that distinguishes us in many ways as a not-for-profit is grounded in that heritage that I mentioned, is our commitment to benevolent care across the system. Last year we provided almost $8 million across all of those service lines to either provide free care or to underwrite care for those who through no fault of their own were unable to afford that care. Maintaining that commitment is at the center of who we are as an organization. It is not easy, particularly in today's environment, but it is at the core of our commitment to those that we serve. Our mission inspires us, our heritage guides us, and our name, relatively new name, as you all know, unites us. And so what does the future hold? Well, frankly, it's hard to say in many respects. I often think about the good folks that came together right here in York over 67 years ago to form our organization, and I think how they could scarce imagine where the entity that they created has gone and arrived at today. I doubt very seriously that they envisioned the breadth of services or the numbers of people served. As Angela will share with you in just a moment, the landscape of senior services in particular and healthcare in general is changing every day. We hope in our community not just to respond to those changes, but to play a role in actually shaping the changes, because our community deserves nothing less. And so, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague and my dear friend, Angela Dohrman. I like to tell people that Angela has already forgotten more about senior living and senior services than I will ever know. It has, as Patty said, been her life's work and her life's passion, and we are blessed as an agency to have her leadership. So I give you my colleague, Angela.
So as I came up the steps today, I saw you're the 27th largest Rotary Club in the world. And Mr. Bailey has many guests here today. My SpiriTrust Lutheran colleagues are here today. Our board chair is here today. The people I'm having dinner with tonight are here today. My best friend from college is here today. I've been looking for my mother for the last so no pressure. 27th largest, that's impressive, and golly, all the good work that you all do, and you students, wow, awesome. So I start by showing you a picture of my grandparents celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. The year was 1977. I was in college, and I can remember coming home for this event. Actually, I went to their home. They lived in a small town in West Virginia. They were born early in the last century, so they were the early part of the greatest generation, the GI generation. And this anniversary event was a very big deal for them. Their family was there, their dearest friends were there, the entire town was there, so that meant there were about 50 people at this event. It was held in the community center in Patterson Creek, West Virginia, that had been converted from the one-room schoolhouse that my father attended as a child. I loved my grandparents. They were hardworking, kind, always focused on family. They were committed to their local community. And in this picture, they are ages 74 and 72. So this is Bill and Edna. They are friends of friends. This is their 50th anniversary celebration this year. It was a cross-country train ride. They're retired, but Bill continues to work and maintain classic cars for a classic car dealership. Edna is very active in their community. She attends lifelong learning classes. She swims and teaches Zumba. They are also family-centric. They're very active and involved with their grandchildren, and they run circles around my mutual friends with them, and those mutual friends are younger than me. They are also 74 and 72. There's a 40-year difference between these two 50th anniversary celebrations, and I think the pictures, as well as the description of lifestyle, is really indicative of the seismic shift in the behavior of generations that we identify as older adults. So I'm briefly going to talk about the three generations of older adults today, certainly spending most time on baby boomers. So if you're a baby boomer in the crowd, I'm going to apologize in advance and also tell you I'm a boomer, so everything I say is okay, because I'm talking about myself. But this is the generation, the GI, or the greatest generation. This generation's legacy is one of sacrifice. They altered the course of the world. Their losses in World War II, their willingness to sacrifice, to scrimp, to share, to collaborate, work together, literally altered our lives and will alter our lives for centuries. I know that sounds a little dramatic, but I would challenge that all of us, our responsibility to this generation is to keep their legacy alive for future generations. They are now in their mid to late 90s, as well as some of them are over 100. There are less than 4 million of them living today. This generation produced 7 United States presidents, from John Kennedy to H.W. Bush. And the other thing is they're parents of the boomers, so they're still impacting society through their children. These are my favorite GI generation folks. Those are my in-laws. They are in their 90s. My father-in-law is a World War II veteran and a retired pastor, and my mother-in-law is a retired teacher. They live independently in a senior living community near Reading. They are awesome. They have a pretty decent son, too. Some of you know him, I think. Yes. Okay. So silent generation, smaller, much smaller cohort. They are age 72 to 92 today. They certainly experienced Korea, but certainly did not have the losses of the GI generation. This generation is best described as putting their heads down and getting it done. They are less interested in luxury and more interested in value. They are also very frugal. They're savers. They may be saviors, I don't know. But one of their legacies will be that they helped shape 20th century pop culture. Both the Beatles and Elvis Presley are part of this group. Oops. And then we have the baby boomers. And again, full disclosure, I'm a boomer. So this is the largest birth cohort in United States history. We are just an outsized presence compared to other generations. Some of you probably just heard that the millennials passed us in terms of total number of generations in a generation, but forever the boomers have led sweeping societal change in every stage of their lives. We have impacted every institution and changed it in this country. Think education, healthcare, politics, social issues. So there's 75 million of us alive today, and this is the huge impact. This is the issue for aging services for the future. The leading age boomers, those born 46 to 55, the hippies, they experienced Vietnam, civil rights, the moonshot, the early days of feminism. Nice to hear that it's still alive there. And they also were the activist generation. Front row seats for one of the most disruptive times in our society. Disruptive not said negatively, disruptive indicating change. The late boomers, that's me and many of us in the room, we observed all of these events as children. They shaped our thinking, expectations, and behaviors. This is the first generation to move away from home. Another important point impacting senior care and services, they really changed family structure through movement and mobility as well as divorce and the expectations of family support. Consumerism. I have a friend who is a boomer who calls us the generation of locusts. And the reason being because of the massive amount of consumption that we boomers have done. We will be studied for years about our spending, the impact on marketing, the impact on the economy. It is something, again, that will impact service delivery, and I'll explain why in a second. We are retiring at a rate of over 10,000 people a day. However, many of us are now staying in the workforce because we want a new life. We want to continue to stay engaged, a second career, and some of us need to stay there because of financial necessity. So there are the 4 boomer presidents. All right, according to Leading Age, the top 3 influences for our planning in senior services are new healthcare delivery systems, technology, the baby boomers, and I would add 2 additional influences, resources, both personal resources and local community and government, and then Alzheimer's disease. So new models of healthcare delivery. I am certain that you have had someone come and talk to you at some time over the last several years about the Affordable Care Act. It has changed the way that we deliver healthcare. One of the greatest impacts, of course, is the goal. One of the greatest goals is to deliver quality of care in the most efficient setting. And so one of the impacts that we really see for senior services is an emphasis on providing care more in a community-based setting. A person's home or whatever they call home. Maybe it's a personal care facility, assisted living community. And certainly this aligns with a lot of people's thinking. They want to be at home. However, skilled care communities are a necessary part of that continuum of providing care to older adults. And I just share how the Affordable Care Act has impacted us. Prior to, if someone who was older went into the hospital and came to a skilled care community, perhaps they came after a broken hip or they sustained some type of injury, they had surgery, they had a pretty full Medicare benefit of 100 days. They used a lot of those days as their benefits. I was sitting in a meeting last week with a Medicare Advantage plan company, and they were showing targets for length of stay for Medicare Advantage recipients. Right now, the average is 14 days. So more and more care will need to be provided in homes. The other challenges are chronic illnesses. The longer people live, of course, the higher the incidence of a chronic illness. I have to say, this has certainly been exacerbated in the last years by obesity. Certainly obesity impacts diabetes, joint arthritis. Alzheimer's is a chronic disease. We'll talk about that in a minute. the cost associated with chronic disease management just continues to escalate. And then the other challenge in healthcare delivery now, in terms of the new model, is workforce shortages. We identify it in our business as our greatest challenge. There is not a day that doesn't go by that I am not engaged in some conversation around workforce challenges. And I want you to think about these numbers because it's a numbers issue. In 2010, the ratio of caregivers to a person over 80 needing care was 7 caregivers to 1 older adult needing care. In 2030, it will be 4 caregivers to every person needing care. Between 2030 and 2040, the population of those over 80 is going to grow by 44%. Caregivers will increase by only 10%. So, again, we have our brightest and best working on this in our industry. There's great emphasis on recruitment and retention strategies, trying to get younger people to come into healthcare and especially geriatrics. I'm happy to talk to you afterwards today. There will be jobs. There's great emphasis on this as we continue. Oh, and we also must continue to look for new ways to deliver care that is not so reliant on workforce. So that's the technology I went to college with in 1976. I love that typewriter. This is the technology I use today. We all use this technology today to run our lives and our businesses. Use of technology in healthcare has become ubiquitous in the delivery of senior services. Every day there's new product design coming out. We get asked to trial things with people all the time. But I want to share with you, I recently interviewed a physician practice. They were offering us off-hour coverage to our skilled care centers, our nursing centers, through video conferencing. So the nurse would take the television to the bedside. She would hook up monitors that the physician could see the results. The nurse would do the assessment. The nurse, doctor, and the resident patient, if they were able, would all communicate around what was going on, and a plan of care would be determined. Again, the goal there is to keep the person from going back into the hospital, to keep the person in the most efficient area of care. It's very interesting concept. I think the future, again, can you tell I'm a boomer? Again, the future holds so much. There's smart house development right now. And again, that is driven by this boomer migration away from family. And so older adults, a lot of them are living alone. And these smart houses will help with communication, with monitoring. Every year I go to a conference that there's always a new smart house development, and I find it so intriguing. Also, why this is so important is with the workforce predictions, that reduction in workforce and the increase in older adults, technology is going to have to supplement hands-on caregiving. It's just going to have to do it. And so I know we can't imagine that right now, but there are the brightest and best people working on that. We need Elon Musk in our industry, I think, too. So the baby boomers, undoubtedly, hands down, they are changing the face of aging. They're creating such a demographic upheaval. Am I up? Okay. There are my husband and I, some friends that we had. We did a 5K with them last weekend in Seneca Falls, New York. The age group here is 59 to 72. These people run marathons. I'm not sure why they're my friends. But boomers want to stay active. They want to stay engaged. They want to stay in the workforce. I show you a slide from the York County Foundation, Community Foundation Embracing Aging. It shows that older adults are continuing to contribute. If you took out 55 plus employees from the York County workforce, over 13,000 jobs would be vacant. Older adults volunteer, and retirees in America are projected to volunteer over the next 2 decades almost $1.4 trillion. So boomers, what's the crisis? What's the challenge? Medicare is the crisis. We have to be able to provide affordable quality care to an aging population while keeping the program financially secure. We have to work on escalating costs of health care, especially expensive specialty drugs. We really see that impacting people. And the care in the final years of life. I don't know if you know this, but most of the Medicaid dollars in Pennsylvania they go to support older adults. So, another crisis, inadequate retirement savings. One important bullet here, 40% of people age 62 are projected to have financial assets less than $25,000 over the next 20 years. Shows you that the poverty range of older adults, 65 and older in York County is growing. Again, these statistics are from York Counts. The great thing about York, though, is there are a lot of people working on these issues. Alzheimer's disease, big impact, 6th leading cause of death, but the important statistics to look at here is the projected cost in 2015 will be $1.1 trillion. There's a lot of research going on, but if we don't find a cure, we are in the middle part of this century when the boomers are in the decade where you develop Alzheimer's. There's going to be a lot of concerns. So, what's the future hold? 30 seconds, the future hold. We know that holds more older adults. Baby boomers will drive the 85 plus population to 18 million in 2050. It's 5.9 million today. Medicare and Medicaid will continue to be strained, so we have to continually find ways to provide care in a cost-effective manner. Baby boomers will once again be changing the workforce because they will be staying in the workforce, and we know that if there is not a cure for Alzheimer's disease, the millennials who will be doing these speeches in the future will have a major public health concern with all the number of folks. So, we know that we need the brightest and best, my grandchildren, and superheroes of the future to help solve these problems. Thanks for having us. I went really as fast as I could. Thanks. And I'm sorry for the locust comment.